to the best netball podcast ever. I'm Carla, and I am still enjoying the Commonwealth Games, which at time of recording is still actively all over my TV.
I'm Leanne, and also looking forward to going to the Commonwealth Games to see some medal matches. Fingers crossed we see England in one of them.
Thank you, Leanne, for being my co-host today. Firstly, how are you? How's your week?
I haven't got the singing voice of Kris, but it's nice to be here. Week is going very well. Always seems to be very quick. It's still very hot and the kids are off school. So it's crazy.
Triple whammy. Tell our listeners who you are, what role you play in netball, and why you agreed to co-host with me this week and hopefully next week.
My name is Leanne, and I have been playing netball ever since I was about 9 years old. And I do believe it is the best sport in the world. I am a coach. I help women to become very strong. And I truly believe that you can keep playing your best netball for as long as possible, as long as you train for it. And I'm still playing regional. I also umpire, although I don't do much of that at the moment.
Well, that leads us quite nicely on to the content of this episode, which is one of our grassroots episodes based around all things netball of every level. But today we're going to talk quite a bit about officiating and umpiring, which both of us are RC Award umpires and obviously helping out our clubs, but not quite at the level of some of the people obviously that are doing it at the top of the game, all the way up to the Super League. So firstly, when we talk about grassroots, it's a term that I think is thrown around obviously in all sports. What does that mean to you, Leanne, and how can our listeners sort of better understand the concept of what the grassroots element of our game involves?
Yeah, I think grassroots relates to every player that isn't going for elite level. So if you are not reaching for the skies to play in the Super League or to play for England or one of the home nations, you are essentially a grassroots player. And I think the term covers all ages, all levels, all abilities, all people that are able to just put the trainers on and come and play netball for competition, for fun, for connection, for community. And I think it's the basis, because it is in all sports, and I think it's the basis of all sports as well. Without grassroots, you don't have the elite, because every single player will have to come through the grassroots.
Do you know, it really frustrates me when you kind of hear the term grassroots, and there seems to be almost this like element of negativity around the concept of grassroots. And I think it's so frustrating when we think about that sheer tiny percentage of people that are going to go on to be the pinnacle of any sport, whether that's like netball, football, etc. We're talking about the 0.01s of the world, and grassroots is the majority. And I think success across the grassroots platform or level is so varied and so huge and so important that I really hope that people see grassroots for what it is. It's the fundamental foundations, but also like the basis of sport, isn't it? And competition is no less valuable. Success is no less important. And I think sometimes we lose that a little bit in the conversation, and it's seen as like the bottom, the lower, the insignificant.
You know, without grassroots, like you say, it is the foundation. And so if a sport doesn't have its grassroots, then nobody can grow from that. So you won't have a pinnacle and elite level if you don't have the grassroots. And, you know, things like how England netball, for example, gets money is through the grassroots, because it's us that are paying our affiliation. It's us that are buying tickets to go and see the Super League games or England games. And so without the players, you don't get the fans. And without that, you don't get the overarching umbrella of the competitions. So, yeah, it all starts with us. And I think we are a really important part of sport. And sport is for everyone, no matter where you play, what you play, how you play it, your ability, how long you've been playing for it. It is important for everyone, and sport is for all, as they say.
Yeah, and I think that's been a real project of England netball, hasn't it? And we've obviously got some interviews coming up. Just one today with Gina Pearce, head of officiating. But our future episodes, we talk to Alice Harvey from England Netball, who obviously is an elite player, but also works for the England Netball umbrella. Not only do we need the grassroots players, the grassroots level, but we also need all of those volunteers. And officiating is a volunteer's job, as is coaching, team managing, all the committee members, the scorers, the parents. And we, at times, I think, just perhaps underappreciate all of that value that brings and just where it comes from and what we need in terms of that structure and foundations to be so successful as a sport or as a community.
And I think it's really important to talk about it this time of year as well, being summer, being pre-season, like having the Commonwealth Games going on at the moment. The Commonwealth Games, let's be honest, is run by volunteers. A lot of those people in those tracksuits, they're there giving up their time for free, and they are making the Commonwealth Games what it is. And then in terms of netball, being summer, running a club is the craziest time. You've got to get fixtures, you've got to make sure you do your trials, get players, get teams, enter leagues, sort out your umpires for the season. And even players themselves that just rock up to play, they don't appreciate sometimes what goes on in the background. And all those positions and all those jobs that get done for free by volunteers. Without those people, we wouldn't have the sport, and therefore we wouldn't have grassroots, and therefore we wouldn't have the elite game.
Yeah, all part and parcel. And that's this time of year, you're right, it is really busy for so many people. And I think that's what we've had so much correspondence about this last few weeks. We get a lot of messages from people that are asking questions around how to make their club more successful, how to promote their club. Obviously, our podcast is a big part of running the podcast is the social media element of getting exposure. And I just think it is so important to publicise all of that work, put those thank yous out there, talk about what happens behind the scenes in clubs, in communities, in regions, in counties, and just prep everybody for what's needed to make that, like you said, that elite game work so well and every step along the way. Let's have a chat with Gina, first of all. We did actually carry this conversation on quite a while after. I was very tempted on the interview to ask her what it was like working with Gary Burgess, but I did refrain. So we don't have the answer to that. But let's go over to Gina's interview and then we'll be back to chat afterwards. Without officials, there simply is no game. So today we're talking about the people behind the whistle, the future of officiating, and how we inspire more people to get involved and why it matters to every single person in our sport. Welcome to the best netball podcast ever, Gina. How are you, firstly?
I'm very well, thank you. Enjoying the lovely sunny weather mixed with the netball on the TV at the moment.
Yes, middle of Commonwealth Games at times of recording. And I hear you're left alone, flying solo while your workmates are all off officiating at the matches.
Absolutely, yep. Gary, who is my boss, is currently umpiring at the Commonwealth Games. Callum, who works in our team of 3 at England Netball, was selected in his own right as a statistician and was statistician today on the England game.
Wow, sounds amazing. So I'm joined by Leanne to chat to you today about all things officiating. So let's start at the very beginning. What does your role at England Netball actually involve? What does a day-to-day look like in your world? And how did your own netball journey begin to get you to this point?
I started playing netball at school, as kind of we all do, moved into a club programme. Somebody said to me, our club's short of umpires. Anyone going to put their hand up and have a go? So I said, yes, okay, I'll give it a go. So I did my beginner award in, I think, about 1995, progressed to C award quite quickly. And then, as many people do, decided that umpiring was on the side, really, because I wanted to carry on playing and sort of play at the highest level I could. So I umpired in my local league, just helping them out where they needed umpires, and carried on playing. I then got to a stage where, this is quite interesting, I think, in terms of how the officiating pathways work now as to how they did then. I was basically talent spotted in my local county league by a lovely Gloucestershire mentor called Barbara Warburton. And she said to me, I've been watching you and I think you've got some talent. I'd like you to put you forward to do your B award. So I did my B award. Took me a couple of years on the pathway to get there and really enjoyed it. And then helped out in my region, slowly gave up playing, got more addicted to umpiring, I think is probably how I would describe my relationship with officiating. Was then again talent spotted within my region to progress to do my A award. And with COVID, etc., that took a bit of time and eventually passed my A award in 2021. My career span is completely different and used to run alongside my passion for netball. So I've worked in customer services roles in the finance industry. In fact, a lot of my background is in the finance industry, financial accounting, that type of thing. Although I latterly was involved in a lot of sort of development, training and coaching of mentoring of people. And it all changed in November 2022. I was walking along a beach in Cornwall, hand in hand with my husband, when my phone started pinging ridiculously. My husband said, well, aren't you going to look at that? And I was like, well, I thought we said we'd have a day where we wouldn't look at phones. And he's like, I'm feeling something's happened. This phone is going mad. So I looked at my phone and about a dozen people had messaged me within 20 minutes to say that a job had just been advertised at England Netball, and it had my name all over it and I should apply for it. It was me. They just read it and literally about a dozen people messaged me. So when I got back to our house that day, I had a quick look on the internet, read the role profile and thought, oh, I do actually like the sound of that. And it basically said, if you wanted to know any more details, to give Gary a call or send him a message. So I sent him a message saying, I don't think you know me that well. He knew who I was, but he didn't know me that well. There's a job been advertised. I'm very interested. Could we arrange a call so I can ask a few questions? He came straight back and said, yes, 9:00 tomorrow morning. I said, oh, okay, I'm on holiday at the moment, but yes, okay, 9:00 tomorrow morning. So had a chat, covered off the things that I needed to know about the role, etc., and said that I was probably going to apply. And the rest, as they say, is history. I applied. I had 2 interviews and I started my role at England Netball at the end of January 2023.
What is your day-to-day like then, Gina? What actually do you do?
I think the key thing for me about this role is that no 2 days are the same. And even if I potentially think I know how I'm going to start my day tomorrow, when I come in and have a look in the inbox, if other things have superseded it, priorities change quite rapidly. So I think the key thing for me is to say that kind of my job is got 2 distinct elements to it. The one element is kind of helping to manage the national program umpires. So I kind of look at myself almost as this, if I'm that kind of like the nanny for the national program umpires. So, I get their availability, sort out all things for them about appointments. I'm the on the ground person at the events who's making sure things are running smoothly. They've got what they need and they can perform to the top of their game. And I work with the assessors on the national assessment programme for those umpires that help them to develop and, progress into the pathways that are the right ones for them. The other side of my job, which is my real passion, is my connection to grassroots netball. So I am that person who is the contact, if you like, for the 53 county officiating leads and the 9 regional officiating leads in England. So anything to do with kind of officiating, so things like rules queries, they will come to me. I work very closely with our learning and development partners. So they are very much about providing the courses. I provide the course content. Yeah. So I'm the rules expert. I provide the content and the information that they need. They then arrange the workforce, etc., and deliver those courses. So we work together. So anything sort of that is the actual qualification, the physical qualification and the courses side of it, L&D deal with. I deal with things like the pathways and how it actually happens in the counties. 53 counties, you would think that there is a lot of common factors, but actually surprisingly, with the different geography, resources, levels of support, it really isn't a one size fits all. You've really got to get to know those people, make yourself available to try and help and support them to develop the officials in the areas that they're in a way that works for them.
So you talk about 53 counties. Is there some that you never hear from? Is there some that you're like, oh God, in my inbox again? I've got the same county.
Have to say who they are.
I think,
no name
I
in
definitely
the
wouldn't. I wouldn't say who they are. And actually, there are some people that contact me regularly, but I think what I'd probably say is actually that's positive, because I prefer lots of contact than no contact, because at least if they're contacting me and they're talking to me, I kind of know what's going on. I can help, I can support, and we have that two-way relationship, and something's not a surprise. Whereas sometimes there are a few counties that are quite quiet. I think probably the best thing to say as well is when I started at England Netball, my first task was to physically contact all 53 county officiating leads and arrange a meeting with them on a one-on-one basis on Teams, just to talk about what my role was, to introduce myself and to try and break down those barriers so that they had a face to the name and felt confident to contact me. And as things evolve with the counties and we have turnover of county officiating leads, I extend my invite to those new officiating leads as well to make sure that we have that relationship. That being said, there are still some that are quite quiet. You can probably tell from the way that I'm talking to you, there is no escaping me, and I keep knocking on the door and contacting them and just checking in and making sure that everything is okay.
I think that's nice though, because officiating and umpiring can be quite a lonely aspect within the sport. You're always the bad guy as an umpire. So knowing you're there, Gina, I mean, if I have a rule query, you've written the book, so I'm coming directly to you to see whether or not I'm right. Always am. But I think it's nice to know, like, umpires have that support, because I am a player and an umpire. I know both sides, and it is hard as an umpire. So it's nice to know, that you are there to help and support them through that. What sort of queries do you get about the hard aspects of umpiring?
You get everything really, because there's not a lot of commonality in counties and things are run in different ways. You get everything from is my county allowed to do this? So it could be things like rules queries. A good example, when the rules changed in 2024, one of the most common queries I got from counties were that 2 of the leagues in my county are not going to adopt tactical changes. Is that okay? The answer to that question is no, that is not okay. Tactical changes are part of the new rules and they are not a permitted variation of the game within the rule book. But, again, it's things like that people need to know where to go to ask the question and be confident that the answer that they're going to get is the right answer, and hopefully in a reasonable amount of time as well. Do try and turn it around quite quickly, but there are some days where the inbox is quite full. So you get those types of queries. So those actual kind of those ones. You then get things like interpretation queries, so you get anything from a player emailing in to say, this happened to me last night, is what the umpire did correct? I love those ones, because guess
Brilliant.
which side I'm going to try and err on. And you get the ones with the umpire that says, this is what happened last night, this is what I did, I've gone back to the rule book, I'm not sure I did the right thing. Can you help me with this so that, if I did make a mistake, I don't make that mistake again? And, that's great, because we as umpires are the same as players. We're all human, aren't we? We all go out there to do the best job that we possibly can, but we are going to make mistakes, and that is one of my top tips that I always say to new umpires, especially young umpires that come into the programme, is you can't go out there thinking you're going to get 100% of the decisions right, because you're setting yourself up to fail, because we all make mistakes. It's not about making the mistake. It's about how you then progress after making that mistake. So put it behind you, move on, make the next 4 or 5 decisions right, and or how you learn from what you did wrong that time to stop you doing it again in the next match. And that building that consistency game on game will be what makes you that better umpire.
Makes sense. So moving on from that a step further, I'm assuming that there is some kind of really tough conversations, and officials over the years, I'm sure, receive criticism that sometimes will cross the line. How big a problem is that in your experience, in terms of like going almost to abuse? Or, have we normalised behaviour from players and coaches or even spectators that just simply isn't acceptable? And how would you go about dealing with that when you get those kind of higher level problems?
That is actually a really good question, and it's actually a very current topic for us as well. And we've actually, at England Netball, on one of my recent county officiating league group meetings, it was actually a straw poll question that I asked in that meeting about, did they feel that the abuse of officials was on the rise? Was it about the same? And, what were there any real huge issues that we're not aware of that they're trying to deal with in their counties? Personally, I've not experienced a significant rise in abuse. I think I probably would say there has been a little bit more of an increase in challenges, but not necessarily in a negative way. So I think there is more of a dialogue between coaches, players, and umpires now about trying to understand what's happened and why it's happened and to stop it happening again. But there are those instances where, people do cross the line, that hot-headed moment, that moment that we all wish that we didn't say what we said at that point in time. But I think it's really important from an official's perspective to try and be that one that stands back, that doesn't ignite those flames and, tries to calm the waters and suggest that maybe the conversation doesn't take place at that point in time and that everyone goes away to reflect, and to offer an opportunity to have the conversation when everyone's in a bit more of a calmer frame of mind, not in the heat of the moment.
Makes definitely good sense. It is just that sort of self-reflection, isn't it? And hopefully that's enough of a motivator factor for it to escalate no further.
I do hope so. We find it challenging, and I think it's very important to say that, we find it difficult to recruit umpires into our sport, and things like abusive officials is only going to make that situation harder. And so therefore I really, really sort of talk to people about, taking that step back and thinking before they say or do something that may put off 5 people joining. So we were going to have 6 joining a course and now we've got 1.
Yeah, that leads quite nicely onto a topic I did want to touch on just before we move on to things that are a lot more positive. But the social media element of officiating, I think, feels like it has changed the narrative. And I mean, I see it all the time on socials where people are kind of questioning an umpire decision, or they're replaying a clip, or everyone thinks they can umpire from holding their mobile phone in their hand, having not done any kind of qualification. I mean, does that put more pressure on it? Has it changed the way umpires think in your experience? Or I guess, is it the umpire just already sort of in that moment, forgetting once it's happened, those decisions are moving on?
I think it is different for different umpires, and I think a lot of that is around your mindset and how you manage yourself and things that happen within a game. And again, it can also be exacerbated by how it's dealt with at the end of the game as well. I think from a national level point of view, and I think this is quite useful, is that all of our national programme umpires have access to video footage of their games, and they will go through their games and they will do their own self-analysis on their games, and they have the ability to clip their games. So any bits in a game that they're not sure about, or they were like, well, this is the decision I made. If you look at this now, do you think it's something different? They can send those in to us and we'll look at them back as well. And then we'll go back with okay, we've had a look at it. This is what our interpretation is from what we've seen there. A lot of it, again, it's interesting as an umpire, it's about being in the right place at the right time to make the decision and being brave enough not to guess. Yeah, because we all think, like you say, that we know what the decision should be from sitting in our armchair or from on the side of the court when the incident happened on the far side of the goal circle. Yeah. Until you're actually there and you're in the moment and you're in the right place, you don't actually know what's happened. So I think it's probably something that we need to major on a little bit more. And I think there's lots of things we could probably look at sharing going forwards about, decisions that were made. And from this angle, this is the decision that you would have given. But from this angle, you'll see that it was something totally different. Just to try and get that message across about actually armchair officials are not always the best ones.
Do you think about some of the suggestions that I've seen on like social media and from different parts of the netball world about like introducing more of the third umpire for them becoming more active, or the other umpire calling in your half if they see something they think you haven't seen it. Do you have opinions about that, or is that a discussion that's happening at the moment?
Those two things particularly are things that are always hot topics. I think one of the real pulls of netball is that it is an instant decision, fast-paced game. And personally, I'd be really loath to see that go, with us having to stop for 5 minutes to look at a video to go back to decide that probably 9 times out of the 10, the decision that was made was the right one. So that's a bit of a no for me. I think, interestingly, the bit you were saying about sort of blowing in your co-umpire's half, that type of thing, we have in the last year, 18 months, might even have been longer than that ago, we've done a few experiments with some things around where the umpires, where their area of control is, and is it better to try and sort of switch some of the areas of control to where maybe the umpire on the opposite side might be in a better position to see. And actually, so far with the work that we did, it doesn't come out that it's actually significantly better to do that. And I am definitely one of these, I'm probably, if you like, old fashioned, but I stick to my guns in the fact that, you know your area of control, you blow it if you see it, and you don't if you don't. That has to be from the bottom, from grassroots, from when you start all the way up to the top.
I think it's really good to see that consistency, isn't it? And we talk about grassroots, and what you don't want to do is have this real split between the mentality of one program that we obviously are majoritively playing in versus the one side of the game that we watch on the TV, think we can play better, umpire better, officiate better, and in reality it's the same game with different levels, but umpired and officiated in exactly the same way. So
I totally agree. And I think also, if you start kind of introducing something whereby there's this grey area, you can sometimes then start to bring in sort of characters, and so Leanne's a stronger character than me. So if she says something happened, then it must be right. And those sort of things start to influence the game. And, from a personal perspective, I don't think that's the right way to go.
Question around the Masters Festival. Firstly, congratulations. It was absolutely brilliant from an officiating perspective. And I know you organised the tournament officials. Both myself and Leanne were on court, feeling the, at times, wrath of that whistle. Probably rightfully so. Well, definitely rightfully so in my case. What kind of qualities were you looking for when you put that together for the team? What impressed you about the weekend? How did it go from your perspective? And how valuable are events like that to attract and nurture your umpires?
Okay, I'm going to let you into a little secret here as well, because I actually took to court at the Masters Festival as well. So I haven't played netball for 14 years.
Oh, wow.
And I played in the Oxfordshire over 50s team that weekend. So I actually had the benefit of seeing both sides of the story. So I was able to see what it's like being in the middle with all the officials, making sure everything was set up and running smoothly, but also seeing actually what they were delivering out on court, which was absolutely fantastic from my perspective. I think that event was invaluable to the netball community. I mean, if there is one word that epitomizes that weekend for me, it's community. But, friendship, laughter, fun. I can't remember the last time that I went to a tournament and it was just so positive. Everything about it was positive. The players, the coaches, spectators, and the umpires, everyone joined together to deliver that absolutely fantastic event. And I think it was the fact that everyone joined together that made the event so successful. I think from the officials' point of view, I was really keen. So obviously when the event was advertised and we talked about it from an England netball point of view, I think it was announced in February time, we had absolutely no idea who was going to enter. We knew what our maximum number of teams was that we could cope with over the weekend. We didn't know who the standard of players that were going to enter. We had no clue. It was one of those things that you just don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you just have to take a guess and go with your you go with your gut. Very much talked about, wanted it to be an inclusive event for officials from, the grassroots level as well, and how we could make that work to make sure that we had sufficient umpires of the right standard if we had some, better players being part of teams, which, there was several teams there that were of a very good standard. But also making use of our national programme umpires and bringing in some grassroots developing umpires to let them see what it looks like to be part of a nationally organised event, and hopefully create some hunger within them to want to progress. So to actually be able to umpire with national programme umpires, get the benefit of their experience, on court, off court, it absolutely worked like a dream. There were several people in the umpire room at the end of the day who came over and said, I'm just so excited. I'm just going to work so hard on my umpiring now. I want to be part of these types of things more often. So for me, I think it hit the mark. I think all I've heard is really good feedback about the event, from everyone that I've spoken to, any social media I've seen, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
If you could just have a word and make it an annual event, please. Because we absolutely
I have
loved it.
had a word. I've had a word. I think I've had a word in the ear of the right people, and I've got fingers crossed too. Yeah, no, it was really good. And actually, there are a number of people that have spoken to me that actually couldn't get there and were gutted that they couldn't be part of the event. And just having seen everything that they've seen on social media, etc., about the event, are literally crying, like, please,
There's
let's
so much
have another one
FOMO,
soon.
so much FOMO out there about that event. Yeah.
There is. So let's keep everything crossed.
We hear that last year you received the Heather Crouch Award. So for anyone who doesn't know, this recognises someone who has made a significant contribution to netball in the Southwest and is named after the inspirational Heather Crouch MBE. What did receiving that award mean to you, and how did you feel when you found out?
Okay, so I actually received the award on the 4th of July this year, so literally the weekend before the Masters Festival. I had no idea. I was actually at the Netball Southwest Regional 1 Awards, and I had no idea that I had won this award. And if I say to you, when Lucy Goodman was there reading, she was the compere for the event, and she was reading out about, the people that had done the adjudication on who was going to win the award, and I was listening, and I was sat there thinking, I wonder who's got this. Oh yeah, that's really good, really good. And then my face came up on the screen, and I will not lie, I burst into tears.
Oh.
I could not, I literally couldn't believe it. I feel quite overcome now actually when I talk about it, because you don't do the things that I do in netball to win an award. You do it because it's what you're really passionate about, what you believe in. But to even be nominated for an award was amazing. But to actually, I didn't win the award I was nominated for, because apparently all of the people that were judging this award said there was only one person for this award. And having known Heather myself, before her very untimely passing, just, beyond words. Very, very proud to have got those votes, and for people to think that what I do is important and worth rewarding.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Finally, Gina, if you had a magic wand and you could change just one thing about officiating at England Netball tomorrow, or in England generally, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. I think there's a slight monetary element to it, but for there to be more funding to enable us to improve the programme, to transition umpires from county to regional level and regional to national level. So whether that be us to have availability to more funds to be able to regularly deploy really good mentors and coaches to people who show some good qualities and some good skills, who would benefit from that, to try and progress them maybe slightly quicker, on more of a sort of a defined pathway when you get into those levels. It's, it can still be very hit and miss in counties, in regions where people are identified, and getting them connected to the right assessors, mentors, coaches to enable that development to help to happen at the speed it needs to happen at.
Absolutely. I agree. Gina, you are an absolute star, and we are so grateful for your time. And I know, like I said earlier, you're flying solo there in England Netball head office, wherever it may be. But Honestly, we're really grateful, and it's a really lovely insight into the world of officiating that I'm sure most people actually have no clue the detail and the scope and the depth of what your work and the work of all the officials involves. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me, ladies. I've really enjoyed it.
Wow, Leanne, that was fantastic. I feel more knowledgeable and I feel a little bit more inspired to look at officiating in a way that I think I could go further. I mean, I'm just a normal C award, get my whistle out when they make me. But actually, it is a really crucial part of the game, isn't it? And I think there is so much to it. But obviously, Gina's been really successful in her role. And I think it's great to see that communication that she's trying to bring into all of those different counties. And I can imagine there's so much variance between every county in the country. In my mind, she only looked after the regions, of which there's only 9, and yet actually in reality it's a bigger role than I thought.
I didn't realise what quite a machine, although it's predominantly driven by herself, which is what a superwoman, but what a machine behind all the officiating and the umpires there actually is. I'm like you, I'm just your bog standard C awards, throw me a whistle if I have to, but it's not my thing umpiring. I do it just to, as I quote unquote have to. But yeah, I didn't realise how structured it really is and the work that she's obviously doing behind it. She's obviously worked so hard. I was really impressed.
Yeah, and I guess almost carving a job out for herself, because it sounds like that role probably didn't exist before. The sport's evolving, England netball are evolving, and that must be hard when you're leading the way, aren't you? It's that trailblazing attitude where actually you're not just filling someone else's shoes and doing what we've always done. So it's quite exciting for me to think about where that could lead and what it means. And it certainly seems from the viewpoint I've seen that England netball officiating side and some of the sort of foundations and structure, it's world class now. And I think people are looking to us to see what they can do. Some of the other countries at the Commonwealth Games, for example, I've seen interviews where they've talked about what we're getting right. I know there's a lot of England officials that are there. Obviously, it's not too far for us geography wise, but that aside, they still would have needed to have been selected, probably trialled. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. We had quite a few listeners' messages on umpiring. I think while we're on the topic, it would be good to have a little go at answering some of these. Now, we both admit here we're not umpiring experts, but I think regardless, true Kris form, you don't need to know what you're talking about, right? It's just your opinion. It can't be wrong. So let's hold true to that.
I think as well, there will be lots of people that I play netball with laughing that I'm doing a podcast about officiating, because I do appreciate I'm actually quite hard to umpire on court.
So you say one thing and do another, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you the right way. I will not perhaps how I would react on court.
I'm always on my best behaviour. I wear the regional competitions hat for the East Midlands, and I just feel like you have to almost be squeaky clean. So even though often my teammates have caused problems, I'm usually trying to stay out of trouble, out of the limelight, and keep my mouth shut. It doesn't always work.
The older I got, the more I bite my tongue. I just give a look now.
Listeners' messages. So many on this topic. It always astounds me how many people write in with questions like they think we know what we're talking about. This one is from Nicola in Yorkshire. Why do you think officials often receive criticism even at grassroots level? And what can clubs and players do to give a more positive environment? Now, it could have been that we meant to ask the actual officials this question, but we did keep Gina long enough, so it's over to us.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you're on court, you want to win. And if you make a mistake, it's a potential for a turnover, or you're allowing the other team to essentially reset. So there is, as a player, you can feel that pressure on you from perhaps your coach or your teammates and things like that. And of course, when you're on court, you believe you don't do anything wrong. So it is hard as an umpire, and I've had it as an umpire as well. I think sometimes my immediate thought is to make sure clubs put a whistle in everybody's hands, because it's very common that people are, I can't umpire. And it's like, you have to be able to understand what an umpire does then before you can be on court and complain about umpires. And you just have that appreciation then. And I think clubs can do a lot with talking with their players. And if it's the same player making comments or saying things to umpires, then, they do need to be spoken to, because umpires are human. They do make mistakes. And, nobody is perfect. I don't believe anyone is going out there to umpire to be purposely pulling somebody up. And also, I do believe that if you're the one that is always complaining to an umpire, you're catching the eye of that umpire, and there's no benefit of the doubt then a lot of the time given. So, you've just got to be careful. But I think clubs need to get people to understand what it's like to be an umpire.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's quite interesting. I mean, she said, quote, even at grassroots level. I think that's quite an interesting point, because we talked about it earlier in this episode. A grassroots level doesn't mean anything that's any different to any other level of netball. It's just netball, and umpires are going out to officiate at the level they officiate at, in the same way players are going out to play in the level they play at. And that for me is a little implication around, well, at grassroots level it shouldn't happen, or it doesn't matter as much, or the stakes aren't as high, and all of those things in my mind don't apply. So I think if we perhaps were a little bit more open-minded as players, and like you said, that's probably around an educational piece, we probably wouldn't react any differently, because actually, why are we criticising our umpires and thinking it's okay if it is because it's just grassroots level? So yeah, good luck. I hope things improve, and if you are getting criticism, stick at it. So this is from Isla. She doesn't say how old she is. She said, I'm a young player who would be I'm looking to do my umpiring this season, but I feel like I might be too young to take a whistle. What would you suggest, and how do I start? Doesn't say how old she is. I mean, what is too young?
In one of the leagues that I have played in, they would really encourage young players to come and umpire, and I'm talking under 18. And they had an under 18 section as well. So even if because it could be quite intimidating if you are young to then go and umpire adults. That is quite intimidating. But there's still lots of opportunities there for juniors. If your club has a junior section, you could go along and start practicing. I think getting in touch with your coach or your chairman or secretary of your club, they will know what the pathway is for umpiring within your county, within your region. So that's who I would get in contact with. And then also think about looking on England Netball websites, because you can go into the beginner umpiring, so you can start to get some, mentoring through your umpiring as well. So yeah, look on the England website as well as talk to whoever runs your club. And umpiring doesn't have to be at adult senior level. You can umpire at junior level as well.
Definitely. Don't let age be a barrier. Go pick up a whistle. Go for it. Let us know if you listen to the episode, if you've done that, Isla. We're keen to follow up.
It's also a really good idea for young people to earn pocket money, rather than getting a Saturday job, which is really hard to do anyway, and you miss your netball, you could play netball and umpire and earn some money.
If nothing else, it pays your match fees, doesn't it? That's the main reason I started to umpire. I could be playing twice on a Saturday and owe £14, and I could umpire the game after and my match fees paid. I have a question, Leanne. You're a coach. Obviously, you coach at various levels of the game. Does the coach element of netball feed into officiating? Do you coach your players how to, get away with calls, if that's not too controversial to say, or do you coach anything within your players that helps them kind of manage the rule side and the officiating side more effectively? Or do you think actually we just coach netball and the umpires do their job, and they're two sort of separate elements of the game?
I don't coach anything specific, certainly not for them to get away with anything or anything directly with the umpires. I certainly will talk to players who perhaps have a reputation, shall I say, with the umpires. And a lot of the time it's during matches and pre-match, talking to them about how they're going to react if they're not getting called or they're not getting the calls that they want. I think the biggest thing that probably overlaps both coaching and umpiring is contest, which is very much differently umpired between different levels, different umpires. And it's talking about probably how I coach, particularly as coaching defenders, about what is contest and what then comes away and goes into contact. And we have conversations about that, about particularly like using your arm, how you can spot the ball without perhaps know where your player is, because then you can use your body to know where the player is. And it's probably that kind of element, but nothing directly that I would say you need to do this to get away from a particular rule with an umpire or something like that. But lots of conversations about how to manage the umpiring so you don't get part of the game management ladder.
Yeah, makes sense. When we were at the Super League games on our Akuma Arena tour this season, I always remember seeing after the games that the umpires take the coaches and the captains away to go and have a conversation, like a debrief immediately after the game. And there was at least 3 occasions where we were sat where we could see it happening, and we sort of managed to get almost in earshot to listen to the conversations. And it's so interesting how sort of, I guess, how that part of the game works, that afterwards they would have that debrief and say, actually, these were the things we were spotting consistently. This is what we want to address for if you're playing again. And I think people don't realise that dialogue that happens and that interaction between those two big elements of the game between the coaches and the officials.
Yeah, we've had conversations like that, like with umpires that umpire NPL, who then say come into our training session to umpire us. We've had conversations with them about a couple of our players and say, look, they always do this. They always footwork, or they always contact, or, they obstruct in this way, blah, blah, blah. So we do have that communication. I think that is really positive and perhaps something that could be followed through like all different levels, that umpires can talk to players and coaches and have it as like a positive thing. Go, look, I'm blowing you for this all the time. This is what you need to address. Or players coming, I never mind as an umpire if a player comes up to me and go, what am I doing wrong? And I think that's just much more constructive way of talking through things with players and coaches in the heat of the moment during the game. Like, just go and talk to the umpire. Like, again, umpires are human. Just go like, what am I doing? And I've done that myself as a player at the end of a match, going, what did I do? I thought I did this, but you tell me what you did. And then then how to adjust, because if an umpire's seen it, they're going to continue blowing you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like continuing that game management on and off the court, isn't it? So just before we go, I feel like it would be remiss of us if we didn't quickly discuss some Commonwealth Games netball. Now, neither of us can discuss the third England game, which has happened a few hours ago on the day that we're recording this episode, because we haven't seen it yet. And thank goodness Gina didn't spoil it when we were chatting to her earlier, because she had seen it. I am gripped, Leanne. I am loving every minute. The variety of netball we're getting to see, it for me is what's really astounding. I think you watch a lot of the netball that you're involved in, obviously, whether that's Super League, whether that's regional, whether it's county, whatever level. And sometimes, obviously, you'll cross over, but we are getting a real treat in the Commonwealth Games so far. The sheer variety and scope of world-class netball. And I have to say, for me, I've seen some of the biggest range of styles of netball from different players than I've ever really known in all the competitions that I've watched over the last few years. What's your thoughts? We're on, is it day 4, I think?
I have loved watching every single minute of every single match. And I know you haven't seen the Jamaica-New Zealand match from last night, and that is a phenomenal match. That is a really good one to go and watch as well. I won't ruin it for you. I love watching the different styles. And as a coach, it's hard as a coach to really watch, because then you start watching the elements of different games. So I'm loving watching, I watch a lot of Australian netball anyway, but I'm loving watching the African game. The Uganda-Wales game was a really good match. And one of the elements I got from that, the Ugandan players, and the reason why some of the turnovers happened from Wales was because the Wales players do not follow through. So they don't take their feet to the ball and think they're going to win that ball. And then Uganda players just come through. And yet some of the Wales players were getting pulled up for contact because the Ugandan players do take their feet to the ball, and so they actually gain so much more ground than that perhaps the Wales players expected, and so then end up contacting them. And I thought that is a really amazing skill that perhaps we're not seeing a lot of over here, and actually that's quite an ingrained natural thing that those players are doing. So as a coach, I'm picking up loads of different things. I'm like, oh, I'd like my players to do that. I'd like my players to do this. So yeah, and all the different styles. And I mean, I think I was Australian, although I'm Welsh. I think I'm Australian at heart because I am quite an Australian style. I like the Australian style and how they play the hard one-on-one game is how I like to play and how I like to coach as well. But I'm loving all the different styles as well.
I'm with you. I feel like if you could just pick a little bit of everything and put it in a pot, I have no idea what you'd come out with, but I can only assume it would be absolutely phenomenal. And just the terminology and the difference in the conversation. And I've been listening to quite a lot of the interviews. I'm always surprised how, I guess, honest and raw those conversations are. I just think, in maybe from my experience and what I've heard in the UK, is that we're quite polite, we're quite nice, we don't like to upset anybody, and you don't always hear that in other countries. And I love it. I love that raw, honest, whether it's feedback, whether it's communication, just brutal at times, but you kind of know where you stand. And I think if we could pick out all of these great bits, I couldn't tell you who I would pick as my dream team if we could pick a player from every country, because I think there's just too many. I couldn't pick you my favourite centre, my favourite shooter, because there's just so much scope. I also love the Australian game. They call it tagging, don't they? Like one-on-one, kind of really dogged tagging. I Googled it the other day. It just basically means like man on, what we would say man on. But you're so impressed. I think Malawi, I mean, they're the shortest team in height, and the dynamism of the way they play, the creativity, I love that. I've been really impressed with that throughout.
Yeah, the agility is something else, is quite insane. And yeah, and I love the passion as well. The Jamaican game last night, the passion from, you'll know as soon as you see it, Katie-Ann Dehaney, there's one bit, you couldn't get, I mean, she's a character anyway, but you literally couldn't get more passion from a player than in this moment with Katie-Ann. And I just love that they are passionate about it. Like, we are all passionate about it and we're screaming at the TV and stuff like that, but they're doing it on court. They're not just going out there and playing. They are working so hard at getting really into it. They are showing that it really means so much to them. And I love seeing that on court.
Yeah, that's why it's going to inspire everyone else, isn't it? And at the end of the day, this is a showcase for the sport and what it could mean to the future generations and future people and future players. I can't fault it. What's your thoughts on Nancy Kuti? Because I think she is a superstar. I didn't know her before. I don't know much about her style of play, but where has she come from? Is it just me?
I don't know. She is incredible. Like, even as like a Welshie myself, I'm like, I've never seen you before. Where have you come?
Same.
Like, her hops, her hold against some really quality defenders. She's holding her own. And I'm like, how is she only in Next Gen? Like, how have we not seen this? Because I didn't watch all the Next Gen. So I don't know what Next Gen team she plays for either.
Same, me neither. In fact, let's quickly Google. I just can't believe her confidence. Literally, I think that's what surprised me the most. Like you said, they're playing world-class defenders. And I don't know where this confidence could have come from to have been able to stand on the world stage, playing this sport as if she's part of the team forever. And I didn't even know who she was. Lexus Nexus Dragons Next Gen. So she has been playing.
Well, that would make sense, I suppose.
For Wales, yeah. Incredible. A real one for the future. A real star in the making.
Yeah. And like, what was great is that she can obviously provide that aerial holding game just like Georgia Rowe. So you can have an immediate switch between the two, but she's also obviously quite agile and so can also provide that rotating circle as well. Maybe she has Philippa Yarriton's spot. Dragons next year.
Could be, absolutely. Yeah, we're still waiting to hear from some of these Super League teams. I think they're dragging their feet now, and I need these answers. I don't know how quickly the decisions have to be made. And maybe the coaches, obviously, that are making these decisions will have seen this for years and we just haven't seen the spotlight yet. But yeah, that's a great Great replacement.
Yeah.
That's all we've got time for today. Thank you once again for joining me and chatting all things netball. I'll just mention our amazing sponsor before we go. We are sponsored by Akuma Sports, who make sportswear and team kit across the country, UK manufacturing. Their work is incredible. If you haven't seen our socials where we go and do a factory tour, please go and have a look. Look at their website, akumasports.com. If you want to listen to more of our content, you could find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the normal platforms. But yeah, like, follow, share, comment, and stay in touch. Or you can email us at thebestnetballpodcastever@gmail.com. Have a great week, everybody. We'll be back next Monday.